I just want to take a few minutes, a few moments here to be able to, on behalf of Syracuse University, be able to say hi. So I want to thank all of SEICon. I want to thank UNLV and everyone attending here. I'm here today as a representative of Falk College. My name is Rodney Paul, and we are the first R1 institution with a College of Sport, focusing on sport in a variety of ways, including things like advancing sport and sport for good, tech and innovation, fueling human performance, etc. Those are our pillars. Now, can I honestly say I know exactly what all those things are? No, right? So let me go ahead and go from those macro big ideas down to more of a micro level, small ideas, and talk about what we do. I am the designer, director, and chair of the sport analytics program at Syracuse University. We started about a decade ago. Kind of really first of its kind. And with it in mind, we started with an international focus as part of the key proposition of what we were looking at, not just being able to think domestically, but also think outside of it. Our five key tools that our students learn are high-level math, coding and AI, an overview of business, in addition to communications, and lastly, but not less important, a foreign language. We make sure all of our students also be able to speak a foreign language to be able to communicate around the world and be able to work in this great industry of sports in any place that they can go. When being able to design this, sure, we came out of a sport management program, but it wasn't so much thinking about just solely sport. We want to go out and be able to compete, right? We want to be able to compete with the Ivies. We want to compete with Stanford. We want to compete with MIT because those are the people that are putting the analytics people in the sports, in the leagues, in the teams, etc., where we want to be. When people ask, what is the goal of the program? What are we trying to do? When I'm talking to others on that type of front, I won't put April or Francesco, who's been with me from the start, on the spot for this, but my answer is world domination. When I go ahead and be able to say that, though, I don't mean it in some kind of subject, being able to subject people or things like that. What I mean it in the sense of that we want to be everywhere. We want to be everywhere competing. We want our students out there being able to show what they can do at every single instant. So we want to treat our program and hence our college like a team, like a sports, like an athletic department, being able to do that. We want to go out and compete in all these different competitions. We want our students to be able to try to get to the top conferences. And I encourage you later today to hear our great students talking about golf and the research they're doing here at SEICon later today. We want them to be able to compete for academic papers. We want them to be able to compete for jobs, ultimately, of all the things they do. We love our domestic partnerships. I mean, we're the analytics provider for the UFL. We work with a bunch of teams and things like that. But I'm especially proud about what we do internationally. In terms of soccer, we have a partner in English football that we work with Oldham Athletics, where our students are their analytics staff. We've also branched that out recently into the country of Estonia. We are the analytics partner in terms of working for them. In terms of basketball, we work in terms of the Kumamoto Voters in Japan, being able to be their analytics staff for on-court in addition to business. I've also recently, Zaid, who's here today, is working on analytics in terms of Thailand basketball and being able to incorporate that into their draft. Beyond that, we're also being able to work in track and field in the country of Guyana, thanks to D-Star Sports and to Marcus, who's here today, that I encourage you to be able to talk to. We're hoping to expand that and work across all different types of sports that are out there. We want to compete, and we encourage our students to be able to compete, to be able to get better. We love to win, right? We all love to win, but we can learn so much when we lose. And maybe even more importantly of what I'm learning as getting older here is that when you can win but still learn, that's when you go ahead and be able to get this to be the best of everything. So overall, what I'm thinking about here in the spirit of SEICon and everybody here, it's not so much of where you are, right, that matters. It's not so much what you are that matters. It's maybe even not so much who you are that matters, but it's why you are. Right. And with that in mind, I want to be able to thank everyone here at SEICon over the last few days for sharing their stories and their inspiration and the why they do things. I want to thank Sean and Tiffany and Adam and Saul and everyone at SEICon for the why they want to put this together to be able to grow and share and be able to work across the entire world and be able to do that. And last of all, I just want to be able to thank everyone for being able to be here and being able to do this. So we go ahead and be able to compete, yes, to excel and to learn and respect. But at the end of the day, being out there, we also want to be able to achieve, hopefully, to minimize, reduce, or dare we dream, eliminate conflict. With that in mind, I want to turn it over to the panel and Amanda. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was very fascinating. Wow, what a global footprint they have. So thank you for sharing that with us. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I love the response. I've been hearing how this conference has evolved every year, so I feel like next year this panel needs to start out with some mimosas or something. So anyway, I'm Amanda Gunville. Again, thank you for being here. And in the past 2 decades, I've had the privilege of seeing the business of sports in my career through many different lenses. I started my career with athlete representation in the great Lee Steinberg. I've worked in broadcasting with ESPN and Fox Sports. I've had produced events for Super Bowl, MLB All-Star, NASCAR, Formula One, and now a media company focused on fan engagement. And what all of those experiences have taught me is that sports have never really been just about sports, right? It is about creating memories between generations. And it's about uniting communities around a common purpose. They influence, culture, shape our perceptions, attract investment, and increasingly serve as the catalyst for economic growth. So today we are going to explore how sports, entertainment, and media have evolved into some of the world's most powerful forces for building relationships, strengthening communities, and creating opportunity far beyond the field of play. And joining me are three very unique perspectives on this. I'm so excited to introduce to you. First, we have Jason Taylor, the Chief Revenue Officer for USA Today. And Jason, I've had the privilege of meeting so many of your colleagues this week, and I am beyond impressed at the caliber of people that USA Today employs. It's been really fun to meet and get to know everybody. Next, we have Miles Hayes, who's the Director of Football for the Las Vegas Raiders. And I tell you, yes!
Haters.
And I tell you, this man wears so many hats. So I'm so excited to get your perspective on everything. And last we have Joe Campos, which he is the managing partner of Broadbridge Capital. And he also has a resume that is about a mile long. But as it relates to this conversation today, he also serves as the honorary consul of South Korea in Las Vegas, as well as the dean of the Nevada Consul Corps. So it's pretty cool. Yes. I love it. So I think let's start this conversation, guys, around the big picture of media. So Jason, USA Today reaches millions of sports fans every day. So from your perspective, how has sports storytelling evolved from simply just covering games to becoming a true driver of cultural influence, tourism, economic development, and international diplomacy?
Yeah, I think what we've seen, if you go back not
It doesn't.
oh my phone fell. Sorry.
We're live, folks.
We're live. Thank you. I don't know how that happened. I think if you go back not too long ago, sports coverage was the score, the statistics, the win, the loss, the game itself. And over the last 2 decades, the story is so much deeper and has so many other branches. For example, the human story behind the athletes, the business impact story, even sometimes the negative impact stories of congestion and traffic, whatever. Our job at USA Today and across our 200 plus organizations around the country, in addition to USA Today, is to cover all aspects of the story so that the game itself is not the story, but the fan wants to know more. They want to know more about the athletes. They want to know their backstory. They want to know for sports betting, prediction, odds, everything. So we have to be there all along the journey for the sports fan. And I think that's not uncommon for any media company. I think what makes it unique for us is, to you brought it up earlier, we have over 40 million sports fans, sports enthusiasts alone who are looking at our site each and every day for news and information and regarding their teams and their athletes of choice. So I think our job is unique to tell that story throughout the entire journey of the impact of the sport itself, I guess I would say.
Yeah. Well, and it resonates with so many different groups because, especially females, we love stories, right? That's how we remember things. It's what sticks with us. And anytime you can have that emotional attachment to something, I feel like it creates a much bigger impact. So that makes
100%.
sense. So obviously, media helps shape how the world experiences sports, but that attention alone is not enough. And the question becomes, what do organizations do with that attention? So Miles, I love to hear your perspective because the Raiders are one of the most recognizable names in sports, right? So how do you leverage that platform to create like lasting social, cultural, and economic impact beyond the football field?
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be a part of this conversation. It's funny because I recently, a part of our global marketing program, got to visit Australia and New Zealand, and there's an affinity for the Raiders brand even before the Raiders have played a game there, because of the recognition of the brand and the affinity for American culture and Ice Cube and hip hop and rap music. So they may not know anything about the Raiders itself and the first down and the second down and the touchdown, but they respect the brand and they recognize the logo. And I don't think that's without accident. Obviously, the Raiders have been on the cutting edge of social impact and change forever, whether that's the Davis family's vision, whether that's Art Shell, whether that's Tom Flores, whether that's Sandra Douglas Morgan as the first woman Black president in the NFL. We have been a part of that change. So I think the Raiders, and I know the Raiders understand the platform, a unique platform that we have as a brand. It's not just impact wins or losses on the field, but really make social and economic and community changes in communities for long-lasting communities, whether that's hosting major international events at Allegiant Stadium or that's hosting a football camp in Guadalajara, Mexico. It all works together to uplift our communities and be an impact.
I love it. Well, obviously, all of that international expansion is not possible without investment, right? And people who are willing to bet on the future, right, Joe? So, um, I feel like sports have become this its own global asset class. I mean, you have so many, it's attracting government funding, sovereign wealth funds, private institutional capital from around the world. And what's interesting is that over the next decade in North America, we're going to host an unprecedented amount of these kind of global events. So I'm curious, how should we understand these moments that are coming through the lens of cultural, sports, and investment diplomacy?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for all for being here. I think this is my third SEICon conference, and I've seen it grow. I've seen it become even more relevant in today's world with what's happening in the world of diplomacy. And I'm going to tackle the question more from the internationalist perspective because I think that's where the real transformation is happening. Sports diplomacy and cultural diplomacy, these are, open-ended terms, uh, loosely defined, but I can tell everyone here today that sports diplomacy and cultural diplomacy have been around for a long time. Uh, Back in the 70s, when China opened its doors to the world, it was as a result of a sporting event. It was a table tennis or ping pong event that happened, and Henry Kissinger seized on the moment. He worked it out to where Richard Nixon traveled to China, and the rest is history. Today, with everything that's going on in the world, the globalization of everything, including, access to these different broadcast platforms, and you can have somebody in India that doesn't even have a home to live in, but they have their PDA, right? They can watch a fight, they can watch an event. So the impact culturally, taking an American sport, for example, like football, and evangelizing the sport and having these mechanisms, like the State Department currently has a sports diplomacy department. Um, just this year, for the first time in our history, the State Department, the White House, and the NFL signed an agreement where they formalized the role that NFL players can serve basically as cultural ambassadors. And there's a business component and economic development piece to this as well. But I think for the purposes of this discussion, really, sports diplomacy has become a tool of foreign policy. You have countries in the Middle East, the sovereign wealth funds, their mandates are tightly aligned with the foreign policy objectives of the host countries. So there's been this incredible transformation that's been happening. Um, One other thing I should mention is that all major nations in the world have ministries of sports and culture. In the United States, until this year, uh, the sports diplomacy department was just sort of like an offshoot underlying the public policy or public diplomacy department and bureau. So now it's a formal instrument of foreign policy. And I think UFC just signing their MOU with the State Department in June prior to the Freedom 250 fight, that's further accelerated things. So we're living in a new era, and the next 10 years with these mega events coming to North America are just going to accelerate things further. And we can talk later about the economic impacts, but they're profound.
Well, let's dig into them. I mean, keep going on that economic growth, like how that's all being affected.
I think the best example is what's happening with monumental sports in Washington, D.C. The whole ecosystem of what we know now is the sports economy. Um, they're just investing tens of billions of dollars. And, there are different revenue streams. So these private equity funds and these sovereign wealth funds, their due diligence teams, when they go out and evaluate opportunities, and they're looking at, there's government money involved, not traditional subsidies. Those are still, for stadiums, those are still a topic. But nowadays you have state infrastructure banks and you have other governmental forms of aid and grant money. So when you integrate those different revenue streams and capital sources into your capital stack, it changes your return profile tremendously. So it's not only an instrument of foreign policy, it's also an instrument for the Department of Commerce. They have sort of a counterpart for sports diplomacy and opportunities to invest in sports, the broadcasting, the licensing, the team ownership, and what that opens up in terms of IP. You own content, you can monetize off of it. So those types of impacts, a project in Las Vegas, with the Raiders and the Allegiant Stadium is a good example. You have community participation because without UNLV playing at the Allegiant Stadium, there wouldn't have been the kind of public support there was for the building of the stadium. And so also one last comment, the models of yesteryear where you had to go out and get public support for financing, now the private sector and these sovereign wealth funds and private equity funds and VC funds are just finding different revenue streams that can derive out of these opportunities. And so you have explosive growth in investment in sports.
Well, speaking of all of these events that are now global moments, I'm curious from a media perspective, as we are looking at things, they used to be just local competitions. Now they are seen all over the world. So how does a media organization like USA Today help shape those narratives that are happening, whether it's how the cities, the countries are perceived? I mean, you have a profound responsibility, but how do you do that? And what's the strategy behind that?
Well, I think what our journalists and our content partners have to do is they have to look at how do we meet the fan where they're at. whether it's through vodcasting, podcasting, social media platforms outside of our own platform. And how do we meet them again to every point along the journey of telling the story? And to do that, sometimes, as I said before, it's the statistics that someone wants. Sometimes it's the economic impact that someone wants. We have to meet and show the connection and really make sure that all that content is tagged together and integrated in a way that a consumer can jump from one story to another to go as deep as they want to go. And I think it's a challenge. I mean, we have thousands and thousands of journalists who are trying to deliver these messages to we have 186 million unique visitors every month to our site. That's 1 in 2 Americans alone. That doesn't count our international. And so trying to give them what they want in the manner in which they want it across all the platforms, across all the social feeds. I mean, it is a very complicated journey. And I tell you, AI, that's a place where AI is helping us to be able to take a story and serve it up in all different ways to all different fans wherever they sit. And then what's so fascinating now in my mind is the data behind it. Like someone can come and read a Raiders story on our site and then go and look at a new car later, and then they can read a story about Argentina. And so we start to build a real profile on who that person is and the data, so we know what to better serve them the next time they come back. We know what they want to read in a newsletter, perhaps. We know what they want to see in a social feed. So that raw data now more than ever helps us in real time make the decisions of what's best. And then for me as a CRO, it enables me to take my advertising and marketing brands and align them with those messages in truly organic ways that deliver results for clients.
So how early are you starting that strategy? So let's just use an example of, because we talked about it a lot yesterday, the Super Bowl. How many months in advance are you crafting those narratives so that you know what the various customer journeys look like?
Well, I mean, candidly, as soon as it ends, we start the next year. I mean, it's just real. And then we even look at, we compete with ourselves a little, right? So we look at things like with such a huge impact, like the World Cup right now, and we think, what are we doing next year? Because there is no World Cup this time. So we already start thinking about what is that going to look like? How do we shape something that's really going to engage that large of an audience? And I told this story yesterday, and I think it's worth telling to this group again. There are becoming more and more moments that are similar to the Super Bowl. Now, they don't maybe have the entirety of that audience, but when you watch and look at USA Today, which is really, in my mind, the heartbeat of America, you can truly see what America, middle America, is looking at and caring about. And you can see there are even combat sports sometimes will be a top story for the day. Taylor Swift's wedding, a top story of the day. But there's an athletic involvement there with obviously her and Travis Kelce. So when you look at how sports day in and day out is a top story for us, we just have to meet the fan where they are, and we have to meet them across every platform, and we have to give them what they need. And data enables us to do that far more efficiently than ever before.
And you were saying that some of these fights are getting
Yeah.
more eyeballs than anything.
Yeah, some of our most visited, some of our most trafficked stories last year, Jake Paul's fight and Mike Tyson's fight.
Mm.
I mean, it's just fascinating to me. And don't get me wrong, NFL hits a home run every week for us. And of course the Super Bowl. But I'm amazed at the Kentucky Derby, the Masters, the Indianapolis 500, Daytona 500. Each of these really dominates the conversation when they're in real time.
Mhm. As we talk about shaping the narrative, let's take it now down to the community level, Miles. I mean, as you're looking at your partnerships that go across, because Miles has a big job, it goes across education, business, government, nonprofit sectors. What have you learned about building collaborations that create that lasting community impact?
I think it starts with listening to the community and what the community needs are. It's funny because sports in its nature is competition, or was built on competition, but it's also a vehicle for connection and collaboration and putting unique expertise and visions together. It's funny at the Raiders, I sit in the department. I'm overseen by our SVP. She's over community relations, government affairs, our foundation, and football development. So varying skill sets and outreach to the community just through the job alone. But as we work together and kind of really build and listen to each other, and really build lasting partnerships and community effect, you can kind of see the growth of everything. It's kind of funny. Um, Internationally, we were working on projects of putting flag football into schools as part of the curriculum. And obviously, the boom with the Olympics coming up here in 2028, with flag football having opportunities to be there in those games, it's really funny that the path to health and wellness and healthy communities is through football, which is a lot different from my upbringing, where health and wellness was not a part of my thought process when it came to football. It was survival. It was toughness. It was everything that you say, kind of with a raspy voice. But to see that football has evolved and now we are connecting to the communities, of building healthier communities through the game of football and creating those opportunities for youth through sport, and opening windows and avenues for women and the girls movement and how girls view sports. I have a 6-year-old daughter who looks at football just as another sport. It's not a thing where there's a barrier for her. If she wants to compete in football, she can compete in football. She can see our team president. She can strive to be the president of the Raiders if she wanted to. She can strive to represent her country at the Olympics if she wants to play football. So all those avenues and that foundation that is started through sports is really special.
Okay, play dad for a minute. Do
Okay.
you want her to play?
I want her to do what she wants to do.
Oh, what a good answer.
But I get answer. I probably push her a little too hard. But yes, I want her to do what she wants to do. But it's really cool that she has that freedom to
Yes.
say, like, hey, Dad, I want to play football today. Or no, Dad, I don't really want to play football. Let's go to dance practice. Or she could do both. Like, to have that freedom as a young girl is special.
It is special. I mean, I played powder puff and almost broke my jaw. But because there was no structure around it. So it's really cool that there's the opportunity to be a quarterback,
Right.
you know, and also be safe about doing it. So I have a 5-year-old daughter too. So
Yeah.
we'll get them together.
Good,
They can dance
good.
and then they'll go play football.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Well, let's zoom out a little bit on the capital side, Joe. So how does investment diplomacy fit alongside sports diplomacy, especially as we're talking about the sovereign wealth funds? Because there's billions of dollars of capital coming into sports.
And it's going to keep growing exponentially. I mean, two great examples are Australia. They recently did a partnership, and actually SEICon and the organizers of this conference were deeply involved in that process. But the Australians have come, and the National Rugby League has partnered with UFC. Turns out they have the exact same demographics in terms of the fan base. And of course, UFC, what they've done with Endeavor in terms of broadcasting and monetizing off of those platforms that they've built out, has attracted just tons of money, for those that invest in the media space. But you also have, in the case of the Australians, I mean, their rugby league is an instrument of foreign policy. Papua New Guinea, they're investing like $400 million over the next few years to stand up a league, because Papua New Guinea is an interesting country. They speak over like 400 dialects. So there's bad language connectivity there. There's a real barrier to economic development or to education or anything. And they have found that, rugby sports is the universal language. Everybody can communicate and understand each other on that basis. So the Australian government has made it a big push. Of course, they have the juxtaposition of the geopolitical tensions with China in the region, and that is all playing itself out. But they have found that sports and investing in sports, you do good and do well at the same time. Another example would be the Qataris, the Qatari Wealth Fund. Small country, I think their per capita income, they have like 300,000 population, and so several $1 million per person, right, of income. What they've done to diversify their economy, because they know at some point in time, oil reserves are going to run low, and they have found sports as being an incredibly effective not only foreign policy tool, but the returns that they get from the investments, Monumental Sports, and there are many others, right? And there's these hidden gems. I think women's sports, like women's soccer, for example, or basketball, um, they're underserved, but the opportunity there is incredible. So with the Qataris, I know of an investor in California that bought the San Diego soccer team, women's soccer team, professional soccer team called the Wave, and back in 2021, paid $2 million for this new franchise. They didn't have a stadium to play in or anything. Well, 3 years later, in 2024, Ron Burkle, who's the investor, sold it for $120 million. That's one heck of a return.
Yeah.
Now, you overlay technology, you take all the data analytics that USA Today and others, in the media compile, and you enhance the fan experience by, really targeting and personalizing your marketing messages. Incredible, the tools that are available now through AI. And so all these opportunities to invest in these companies that are at the cutting edge of these rolling out these technologies to be able to track your customer. Um, it's incredible. So the sovereign wealth funds and even countries like Australia in their national budgets, what they have found is that, because their public pension funds are big investors as well, big institutional investors in the marketplace. So what happens is that they're investing in sports. They're also investing in the hospitality sector. They're investing in the sports medicine and in medical technology writ large. All these different, in media companies. Look at Endeavor again. UFC is a great example. And so I just think this is beginning of sort of a transformation in not only how sports is, as an entertainment product is financed, but how it's integrated onto these platforms that include, these stadium districts in the future. Allegiant Stadium sort of is a standalone facility because of the lack of land in the area, but um, more often than not, you're going to see cities that have universities. I mean, UNLV is an interesting case study here for the question, because the whole educational system is also a part of the platform that includes, hospitalities, hotels, and so forth. And I think just on the research and development, which really drives innovation, and it drives, investment into these different companies that are providing these different services. UNLV's Sports Innovation Institute, and how they're housed in the UNLV Hospitality College. There's an integration, right, of all these different platforms. So we're going to see more of that. And I think that's what's going to attract even more money from other investors as well, small investors as well as large institutional.
Yeah. Well, as you talk about these teams, I mean, what a great investment. 2 million turns into 120. Obviously, that value has to come from somewhere. So, Jason, from your perspective as the CRO of USA Today, you have focused on creating that value for the advertisers, the partners. And so, what do you think the brands like? What are they looking for today when they invest around these major sporting and entertainment events? And how has the definition of ROI changed beyond just impressions?
Yeah, I think, a lot, we work with tens and thousands of brands each and every week.
Hmm.
Everything from large, major household names to mom and pop companies. And I think one thing universally has remained the same. People do still want reach and scale, and we offer that. At the same time, we have clients and many brands who need, want, and deserve in a modern landscape the data that shows them the return on the investment in real time.
Hmm.
How, not just how many people saw my ad, but how many people acted on my ad, how many people clicked through that Raiders ad to read that story and or to buy a ticket and or to schedule a trip to Kansas City when they play Kansas. Like, we can show them that now in real time. So that attribution is becoming more and more important to clients. And there are many, many brands that want that. And we have an ability to do that. And I think that only continues. And I think the other thing is more and more personalization. I think, we have a homepage for you where people can customize the homepage of what news they get each and every day when they log into USA Today. As those ads can be customized to that individual and show up, and we can, follow that same ad campaign as they go onto Google, as they go onto Facebook. We can carry that same campaign over to other platforms. I think it enables us to, again, show up throughout a journey and enables us to get more and more true data that shows the return that the client's getting. And I think that's an expectation by almost everyone now,
So
big and small.
has that increased the value? Because I could see it working both ways. I could see that now that you have more powerful information, you can prove the value. But then on the other side, you have to prove the value. So are you seeing that now you can charge more?
I think there is a definite path towards a more premium optimization of a client's spend
Mm-hmm.
by showing very specifically the return on that investment. At the same time, because we have USA Today, 1 out of 2 of Americans looking at us, that sheer broad depth and breadth and scale, and across all of our 200 plus other media outlets throughout the United States, there is also, with that depth, breadth, and scale we offer, the visibility of the brand still has tremendous value. We just had this conversation at the Cannes International Marketing Festival a couple of weeks ago in France. And you can walk by a store each and every day, and you one day walk by and you never have went to that store, never thought about it, but a suit appeals to you and you go in and you buy the suit, right? Well, it's the same thing. If clients are only targeting like customers or data that shows them a specific customer, then they're still going to miss out on
Mm.
a moment where someone can randomly be introduced to their brand for the first time and all of a sudden have interest. So I think there's a balance. And I think our sellers, our account managers who work with our accounts and the brands we work with, that's where we try to educate and help um, make the buy more sophisticated by getting them to balance both the data driven result,
Yeah.
but also the sheer depth, breadth, and scale of visibility and awareness. It still matters. It's a noisy world. And so, how can brands show up adjacent to sports in very organic ways
Mhm.
that feel real and feel personal instead of slapping a logo and let's go? Right.
Light years ahead of Mad Men.
Exactly. Yeah.
That was that was when advertising was easy, or maybe not.
That's also when you smoked in the office. So we've made progress.
We have, but well, I don't know. Maybe you still have cocktails in the office
Oh, I
too.
wish.
um, I'm curious, as far as from a local standpoint,
Mhm.
what do you believe is the biggest opportunity for sports organizations to use their platform? Because we're talking about connecting people through media, but now let's talk about connecting people through the organization and how can, what is the biggest opportunity to foster those, the cultural understanding and really just bring people together?
Yeah, I think it's it's a saying, obviously, like the children are our future, and um, I have a unique role with the organization where I'm in front of youth and parents and coaches a lot, and I think the biggest thing that sports organizations can do is access. What are those access points? We have to say, shout out to my guy EJ here. If you see it, you can do it. If you can touch and feel it, then you can become it, right? And so, where are those points where we're meeting them where they're at in the community to bring graders to them to give them access points that might not be on the football field. That may not be an opportunity to play the game, but that might be an opportunity to just, I didn't know this position worked, or this position is opportunity within the Raiders, whether that's in media, whether that's in finance, whether that's in legal. There's a lot of different opportunities that may not be known to the common that exist. if we're not in the community and bringing it to them where they're at, right? And so I think that's the greatest opportunity for sport, and particularly football, because it's in itself in the game, it's a unique perspective where you can't be successful without a diverse thought, a diverse skill set, a diverse body type. And so it's really funny that football can be that connecting piece and that connecting tissue to the community that just makes it real, makes opportunities real. I grew up playing football, but I didn't know these opportunities exist outside of the football field, right? And we can only play sports actively for so long. So how do you stay engaged with how do you stay engaged with the organization? How do you stay engaged with something that maybe you grew up as a passion? You have to be in the community to know. And to be that. And then the Raiders is a big brand. It doesn't necessarily just represent what happens at Allegiant Stadium. It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. We work with food insecurity, right? So it could be a meal. They could see the Raiders brand and say, hey, they provided a meal for me when I was in my dire need. So I think sports organizations have those opportunities to be something to everybody.
I'm curious, as you connect with other people who are in your position at other teams, do you find that your job is more challenging because the Raiders are new to this community? Or do you find that you actually have more opportunities to be creative because you're starting basically from the ground up with this community versus somebody who's been in the Cowboys or Dallas forever?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, but I think, the best opportunity for growth sometimes is to sit down and listen, right? And so being a part of this community and learning this community has required listening and understanding what the community needs and how we can touch the community, how we can kind of bridge the gap in a lot of different ways. So to answer your question, I think it's been a great opportunity. It's been allowed us to be creative, to use the brand and our platform in different ways. Um, so I think it's been a positive overall.
Very interesting. So we've been talking a lot about the sports, kind of more global. I'm curious, Jason, from your perspective, as we zone in on the athletes themselves, because they have become, as you were talking about, global ambassadors, they're creators, they're now entrepreneurs, they're doing it all. And their influence extends far beyond that playing field. So how has that shift changed the way media companies build partnerships, create the content, and engage audience across so many different platforms?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fascinating, and I think we're just on the cusp.
Yeah.
I think you fast forward 10 years, the same thing we're seeing now with so many pros is going to be even at the high school level, right? And I'm fascinated, now when you see female athletes designing shoes that are being worn by male teenage boys and they're fighting for those shoes. Like I just it's these brands that these athletes are building for themselves, this entrepreneurship that are it's a part of that journey we need to tell, part of that story we need to tell. And so we're constantly what positions USA Today in a really unique spot is because we have these 200 plus local markets where a lot of these now professional athletes we once covered in high school.
Yeah.
So we have these deep entrenched roots with these athletes and we've watched their entire journey. We were talking about like Drew Brees about to go into the Hall of Fame. Drew Brees went to West Lafayette, one of our markets, Purdue. He was in New Orleans. We have properties in Louisiana. I mean, it's just, we covered this guy his entire life, right? And so when you see that in the deep entrenched roots that our journalists build with athletic directors on colleges and high schools, booster club presidents, colleges and high schools, coaches. I mean, so we're able to tell a more deeper story. And I think that entrepreneurship, all of that, then they trust us in the process to continue to tell that story, to continue to highlight their strategies. And I think it becomes just more and more important. There's a lot of noise, social media, but to align yourselves and your news releases and your press releases with true brands that you can trust, like USA Today, I think it gives them some credibility into what they're trying to accomplish, and I think there's a loyalty there because we've always been fair, we've always covered them in fair ways, and I think you'll just see more of that. I think again, it's going to get down. NIL has obviously changed the college athletic experience. And so I think it's only going to get deeper into that level as these brands of these individual college athletes get bigger and bigger and more entrepreneurial. And then I think high school, it's knocking on the door right now. So
Yeah. And as we're looking at this, bridging the gap and bringing our sports into global environments, Miles, how important is it to have the individual athletes on board with that as opposed to just the big name teams? Is that, I mean, you talked about it a little bit, Joe, too, about being ambassadors. I'm curious from your perspective, how much engaged are your athletes in doing that work?
They're very engaged. I mean, they started somewhere too, right? And so their story started at a certain point, uh, and a lot of times they can be role models without even really knowing it, right? And it's just about a little bit of time. And so I think they are very aware. Actually, I know they are very aware of the platform that they have, and the impact that they can make globally, as identification. Um, they Brock Bowers, for example, is known in Australia and New Zealand for fantasy football, right? He's just a figure to them, right? But Brock being in the community, he hosts football camps across his hometown and across in Vegas. He understands that he's a human too, and so for a youth or a child or a family or a community to be able to see them and touch them and feel them as real individuals can inspire them to do some of their next goals and reach some of the heights that maybe they didn't expect of themselves. I think our athletes play a vital role in that, and they understand the role that they play in being ambassadors for not just the Raiders, but just being ambassadors for growth in itself when it comes to the community.
Yeah. So, Joe, I'd love for you to weigh in on the same topic because you're seeing it from that governmental investor standpoint. How important is it to bring the athletes in versus just the teams?
So, a couple of interesting examples. First, let me uh, say a few words about your president, Sandra Douglas Morgan. So, I've had several conversations with her because her mom, it turns out, is Korean. Right. A lot of people are not aware of that, but her presence in the Korean American community here in Las Vegas has been incredibly impactful. They not only follow the sport of football now, because they're mostly soccer fans, from their upbringing, those that are, part of the diaspora community, but also from an investment standpoint. You have these global brands like Samsung, LG, Hyundai, and so forth, and uh, talk about branding opportunities, marketing and advertising opportunities, and so forth. That's a significant factor. Another interesting example is a young gymnast. Some in the audience may know of or remember Nadia Comaneci from Romania. She was 14 years old when she won the gold medal. Anyway, she's taken that brand, she's made it a global brand. It's called Perfect 10 from her Perfect 10 scores. And she's also an honorary council, part of the organization that I'm a part of, representing Romania. And so they're ambassadors as well, very effective. And last example I'll give is Tom Brady. There's a recent event that took place in Washington, D.C. at the Meridian Center. It was sports and cultural diplomacy focused, and they had a dinner and they were honoring um, the president of FIFA World Cup, the sponsors. And there's a quote that I want to read it directly because I think it sort of encapsulates everything we've been talking about today as it relates to sports and cultural diplomacy. So it came out of the Meridian Center where Tom Brady was the guest of honor and he was the keynote speaker. And it was published as I quote, in today's world, sports and entertainment are not just industries, they are diplomatic platforms. And in Nevada, for example, we have the ability to turn those platforms into engines of trust, investment, cultural exchange, and global economic growth. And I think that pretty much sums up the incredible impact and transformation that's happening, not only from an investment, but also a geopolitical and diplomatic standpoint.
Incredible. That does sum it up. So one last round of questions. You already know we always end every panel forward looking. So I'm curious from each of your perspectives, what do you think is the biggest opportunity globally in sports and entertainment that, yes, of course, takes into consideration financial opportunity, but also the biggest impact?
Interestingly enough, because it ties into what I said last time, I think it's the high school athlete. The globalization of that high school, that diplomacy of all of these high schools and these families and these students, and that fandom is real. And I see it each and every day across the heartland of America. I see it each and every day through the USA Today and our Super 25 rankings. I see it globally with our properties that are international. There is a fandom that exists there that if we could figure out as business leaders how to pull it all together, like similar ways we've done within our own organization, pull that content together. But I think there is a real power in that fandom
Mhm.
that is real and it's deep rooted and it lasts longer than your kids' 4 years in school. There's a passion and a loyalty that we need to flex a muscle and figure out. I just think it becomes a bigger and bigger definer of where marketing brands are spending money, et cetera, once we wrap our arms around it. So
Do you think it's healthy to monetize a high schooler?
I don't think it should be as much around the athlete as
Mhm.
the stories
Okay.
in my mind, and the ones to watch. Like the story behind it versus the true personalized slap a brand on a kid. Like I don't like that. I don't like it on NIL either. But but I do think the capacity of all of that, or the collection of all of those stories and all that's happening at the high school level is powerful, and it's great storytelling. I mean, I have dear friends and colleagues that now work at ESPN, and some are anchors at ESPN who used to work for me earlier in their career. And they're like, Jason, my passion is still those high school coverage. That high school coverage is so much. Yes, I've interviewed Steph Curry. Yes, I've interviewed whoever, but it's those high school kids and those stories that are meaningful and moving, and they give you the goosebumps. Like there's just a lot of great storytelling
Yeah.
at the high school level, and that fandom is raw and it is real.
Well, it's so true. I have a podcast and I interview athletic directors in high school. And that's one of my favorite questions to ask them is tell me a story about an athlete that you'll never forget. And the stories are, I mean, it's what all the movies are made about, right? It's the kid that, had a tough and then they see the light and they use sports or they find their passions in all different ways. And it is absolutely gripping because you see yourself in it too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm piggybacking off that point. I think it's the access point, and for our youth to be able to see themselves in sport, and not just. I mean, growing up watching Michael Jordan, he was like a mythical person, but through media now you can really see what Michael Jordan's day to day life really is, right? And you can see some identification with sport. I have an example. We had a young lady that was a former rugby player in Australia, and she was on the kind of their minor league system, and through our partnership with the governing body of American football there in Australia, we were able to bring her here to be part of an event here at our Raiders headquarters where we had college coaches and recruiters there. You can get varsity scholarships. You can get scholarships to play flag football in college now for young ladies. And so she was there to able to show her skills and just her ability. And now she's going to Manhattan University or University of Manhattan in Manhattan, full ride scholarship. And so that is a pathway for her that has probably changed her community and her path just through access points. So she could see herself in the game of football. She's not going to just be a fan of the Raiders because of that, but she could be a fan of the sport, or she can be a contributor to her community in different ways because of the educational platform that she's on now and growth in. Obviously, I've just mentioned the Olympics earlier, right? And seeing football into the Olympics and having those opportunities for young ladies and young men to represent themselves in their country. I think it's a really cool path, and I'm excited to see what the next 5 to 10 years holds with that.
Joe?
There's a lot of talk about the impacts of AI and quantum computing and what that holds for the future. I view sports and cultural diplomacy as something that impacts humanity. And I take AI and considering, I mean, there's a fork in the road, right? It can go, the dark side of AI is, weaponization of everything. Um, the positive side are the strides you can make in medicine and other technologies that help humanity. So I'm very optimistic in terms of even sports. There's esports, right? But participatory, personal uh, sports and competitiveness on that level, physical, robots are never going to replace that. It's never going to happen. So I think that in a very strange way, looking into the future, the next 10, 15, 20 years and forward, I think AI and all of its capabilities is going to enable, like the work that you do or the sports teams. It's going to enhance the fan experience, and the players and the athletes are going to be better served. And I think that the story of the next few decades is going to be how technology enhances our lives. So it's a really a positive for humanity writ large.
Absolutely. And I think to wrap that beautifully in a nice bow, we've been talking about media, big organizations, big athletes, all these big movements that are global. But at the end of the day, it comes down to one thing, and it's people,
Yeah.
right? All of this has the power to connect people so that we can feel more. We feel belonging, we feel love, we feel joy. And to me, that's the biggest impact of all. So please join me in thanking our amazing panelists today.